Hi, this is Scholastic News Kid reporter Veronica Louise Mendoza, and today I'm here at Skywalker Ranch. I'm going to catch a quick preview of the new Star Wars in 3D, and I'm also going to catch a couple of interviews with the people who made this magic possible. So, what is the sound editor like you do for the Phantom Menace?
Well, a sound editor is basically taking everything you hear in the film, and our director, George Lucas, likes to consider sound 50% of your experience in the movie theater. What you see and what you hear makes up your experience. So a lot of care goes into making the soundtrack of a Star Wars film. And a sound editor basically takes what the director's wants and visions are for the sound, and we make sure we do that for him in the form of sound effects like explosions and atmospheres and creatures and vehicles and lasers and lightsabers and all that, paired with the sound, the recording of the dialogue and all the actors with the music. All those things are layered together into our sound mix, and that's the job of an editor, to put that all together for the director.
What exactly does a concept model artist do?
Well, my job was to take the sketches that the other artists would draw and interpret that in 3 dimensions. So I'd get a drawing of something like the Queen ship, which is this big chrome kind of elongated thing, and figure out what that thing looks like as a 3-dimensional object. And kind of the cool part for me was, usually you only get a drawing of like one angle of it, so it doesn't show everything. So it gives me some latitude to kind of put some things into it that that I find interesting. So yeah, it's just to take those drawings, make them into a 3-dimensional blueprint that they can use for all the other production needs on the film.
And why is that important, especially for the Phantom Menace?
Well, I was saying this earlier, that for a movie of this type, everything has to be created. There's not one thing that you can take off the street from our world and plug into Star Wars and have it work. So every single thing has to be created. So it has to be imagined, it has to be drawn, and it has to be realized as either a digital thing or as a full-size set asset like Anakin's pod, or as a miniature. So and the thing that's helpful is when we build these 3-dimensional models, everybody's on the same page right then and there. That's it. That's what it's going to be, whether it's full-size set or what.
Where do you get all the sound, like for lightsabers and pod racers and stuff that don't really exist in the world today?
Well, most of it is going out into the field and recording objects that you think would represent what you're looking at. And because the Star Wars is a fictitious, universe, we can take some pretty dramatic license with things, and as far as what we record. So, like the pod race was one of the first things we did for the soundtrack of Star Wars, because George Lucas really likes fast vehicles and engines, so he was very, focused on making sure we got this right. So I went out and recorded jet engines and Ferraris with unmuffled engines and jet boats and helicopters, and we recorded all those kind of things and put them together and did some sound design with my coworker Ben Burt, and put that together and made the soundtrack of the pod race.
What inspired you besides getting the inspiration from the blueprint, what inspired you to make the models?
Well, partly it was, being a fan of the original Star Wars. I saw it when I was 14 years old and totally loved the look and feel of that Star Wars universe, and worked on a lot of other movies, but none of them are quite like Star Wars. So Star Wars has a special place in my heart just because of what it is. So yeah, it was really fun. The whole time it was really fun because you're actually getting to work on Star Wars, you know?
Did you ever imagine that you'd be working here someday?
I hoped, but but it's hard for me. It's really hard to connect the dots that it actually happened, because to go from being a 14-year-old kid watching the movie in the theater and being totally mesmerized by it, and actually winding up working on the prequels, what are the odds? There weren't that many people working on them. So
how did you convert the sound from the 2D original Phantom Menace to the 3D?
Well, it's exciting to hear the film again in the theater, because the last time that this was heard in the theater was like 12 years ago. And then we had a DVD that was released after that had some new scenes in there. So those scenes have never been heard in a movie theater. So I've taken those scenes and made them theatrical level quality. That's why we're in a room right now that's like the size of a movie theater. That's where we do our mixing, and we make sure it's going to sound really good in a big room. So that was the main goal, to make sure the audio is going to support this new visual experience you're going to have with 3D.
What is your advice to kids who want to be like you someday?
Well, the thing I was saying to somebody was that, don't let somebody tell you you can't do something, because I wouldn't have thought this would have worked out, but it did. And not everything does work out, but certainly don't let somebody tell you you can't do something. If you really want to do it, don't let them kind of sway you from it.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.